Order at 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting for Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Madam Clerk, will you take the roll?
I will. Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers.
Here.
Dee McKee. Robert Yunt, are you on the phone? Moki 2, are you on the phone? Jesse Sumner.
Here.
Ron Bernier, are you on the phone? We have one member on the phone. I don't know which one it is, Madam Mayor, but we do have a quorum in the room.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Is there anything the members would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay. Assemblyperson McKee, speak when you are ready.
OR 22046.
Assemblymember McKee?
Is it not on yet?
No, there's no ordinance on the consent agenda. So,
Oh, so I can't pull anything?
well, we're talking about the consent agenda right now.
Yeah.
Is there anything to pull off the consent agenda? There's no ordinances on the consent agenda. Did you mean a resolution or AM?
I think I meant a resolution. 22043.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. And
Robert Yona's online.
and
Thank you.
22030. And under action memorandums 22030. And then 22033. I just have some questions that I understand I have to pull them in order to talk about, right? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Are there any further items that any of the assembly people would like to pull from the consent agenda? We have two people now online. Is that what we have? Okay. Two is what Caleb's telling me, because I think Assemblyperson Yount just spoke here when Assemblyperson McKee. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
We do have Assemblymember Yunt on the phone. If Assemblymember 2 or Assemblymember Bernier is on the phone, please press *2 so we can hear you. We know one of you's on the phone. We don't know which one it is.
Got all three, Caleb's telling me.
Okay, we have all.
Assembler
Thank you. both.
Bernier on phone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I had just asked the question. I want to be sure everybody on the phone heard me. Does anybody on the phone have anything they want to pull from the consent agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I would
Negative.
22-033.
Okay, I'm sorry, you were interrupted. Can you speak again, sir? Which one did you want pulled?
This is Moki,
Uh-huh.
and I'd like AM 22-033.
Okay,
That was already pulled by Assemblymember McKee. Thank you.
Thank you.
was there someone else on the line that wanted something pulled? Okay, hearing no one. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, and the agenda is approved as adjusted. Would you all stand, please? And let's see, who hasn't led the pledge? Mr. Attorney, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on our agenda is our Assembly regular meeting minutes from the 15th of March, the 5th of April, the 7th of April was a special meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes as they were presented? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. The next item is that we have a couple of proclamations. So the city clerk and our borough clerk and I are going to come down there, so bear with us for a minute. Would I have the gentleman from Instar? Okay. Pardon?
You want to stand on this side?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
You're taller, so let's go, yeah, stand on this side because they'll do the pictures. And I understand you'd like to say something after I read the proclamation, is that correct?
Not necessary, but I'm happy to.
Okay. It's your time, right? Look at all these people you have here.
Yeah, I'm not one for big crowds, but I appreciate it.
Okay. Whereas each year Alaska underground utility infrastructure is jeopardized by unintentional damage. And whereas the 811 phone number was designated as the national call before you dig number in 2005 and is an active free service throughout Alaska that dispatches utilities to locate lines at the subject project. And whereas placing a call to 811 at least 2 business days before digging, 2 days, respecting the marked lines and digging with care greatly reduces the risk of hitting the utility line. And whereas April is nationally recognized as Safe Digging Month and serves to promote public awareness about the importance of calling 811 before you dig. And whereas at the rate at which Alaskans hit utility line is 3 times greater than the national average, thus local and state efforts are necessary to increase our awareness of the 811 call. Safe digging, preventing damage to underground utility infrastructure, and ensuring public safety. Now therefore I, Edna DeVries, Mayor of the Matsu Borough, do hereby proclaim and pronounce April 2022 as Safe Digging Month. So this is yours,
Thank
and you
you
say
very
anything
much.
if you want to.
Thank you to all who have come. You guys can hear me okay? The only thing I'll add to this is the most important thing that this is a free service to all homeowners, all businesses. So anybody who's planning to do any sort of excavation, this can be something as simple as pile driving a simple stake for a fence to a deck pile or to digging in your yard. This is a free service. It's really worthwhile and it benefits the community as a whole. So thank you very much for the proclamation and thank you all for listening tonight. That's all I got.
Good. You did.
Okay, thank you.
You did great.
Thank you.
Yeah. This next proclamation is Second Chance Month for April 2022. Whereas every person is endowed with human dignity and value, with redemption and second chances being a part of American values. And whereas nearly 70 million Americans have a criminal record, including more than 4,000 individuals incarcerated. And whereas individuals with a criminal history often struggle to find housing, employment, education, retain voting rights, volunteer in their community, and pay for significant debt that arises as a result of their conviction and their incarceration. And whereas the Council of State Governments report that the number of legal and regulatory restrictions that limit or prohibit people convicted of crimes from accessing employment, occupational licensing, housing, voting, education, and other rights, benefits, and opportunities exceed 44,000 with 599 restrictions specific to Alaska. And whereas these restrictions, barriers can contribute to recidivism, which increases victimization and decreases public safety, the stigma and legal barriers associated with a criminal record results in lost human capital and lost economic output for the United States. And whereas the designation of April as Second Chance Month would contribute to increased public awareness about the need for closure for those who have paid their debt and opportunities for individual employers, congregations, and communities to extend second chances. And I believe in second chances in more ways than one. And now, therefore, I, Edna DeVries, Mayor of the Matsu Borough, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Second Chance Month.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Todd.
So Second Chance Month is not asking for anything special, just asking for a fair shot. As the mayor shared, there's 1 in 3 Americans have had interactions with the criminal justice system. There's almost 2 million workers that are being denied access to jobs because of their criminal background that we could add to the workforce in a time when we're looking for employees. There's almost 2 million that can't or are face barriers. $78 billion in lost economic opportunity nationwide because of those barriers. America leads the world in incarceration. 90% of returning citizens struggle to find employment upon their release. And studies show that every time a formerly incarcerated person has to change their residency, and finding residency with a criminal background is very challenging. Every time they have to find a new residency, their chances of recidivism goes up by 70%. So Second Chance Month is just acknowledging that the people that we incarcerate eventually get back out. And if we don't, as a society, make it possible for them to re-enter society and be a productive part, it just makes it worse. So thank you.
You're welcome. The next item on, all right. The next item on our agenda is agency reports. And I think we have a report from the city of Wasilla, right, man? All righty, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor DeVries and Manager Brown and Assembly. I'm Glenda Ledford, Mayor for the City of Wasilla, and this is the week of April 18th, 2022. Happening at the Menard Sports Center. The annual Matsu Builders Spring Home Show is April 23rd and 24th. They have over 125 vendors that have already signed up, so it's going to be a very good show. The Matsu Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Community Walk will be held at Wonderland Park on Saturday, May 7th from 11 to 3 p.m. The City of Wasilla's annual Community Cleanup Day starts May 2nd. Saturday, April 30th is the National DEA Drug Takeback. If you have unused or expired medications, you can take them to Fred Meyers in Wasilla or Palmer and the Willow Library from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. to safely dispose of them. Also, the 4th of July is coming, and we have our annual 4th of July parade. Yes. So this year, we're doing something a little different. We're looking for sponsors. We have 3 different levels of sponsorship. You can go to cityofwasilla.gov and look on the internet, and it'll tell you about the packages. And also, we're looking for warm bodies that would like to come and volunteer to put this on. We expect anywhere between 125 and 150 floats this year because it's an election year. So, is the borough going to have one in it? Think about it. Oh, come on, Mike.
Is she challenging you, sir? And yeah, sounds like it. And I don't know if the mayor of Palmer is still next door overseeing the elections, but we can get him in on it too. So anyway, thank you. So do we have a report from the school district? Anybody here from the school district that wants to fill us in on anything? I guess not. Todd, State of Alaska, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Assembly, Manager Brown and staff. Todd Smolden with the Matsu Governor's Office. Just a couple of quick things because I know you're going to be very busy tonight. First of all, we're excited to announce the hiring of Ann Sears, who was the first Native Alaskan state trooper. And she is going to be heading the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Investigation Unit that the state is establishing. This is part of the People First initiative that the governor put forward a couple months ago. It's an initiative that focuses on 5 social concern related areas: missing and murdered Indigenous people, homelessness, the foster care system, and others. And so it's just really exciting to have her on board with her experience. The other item I wanted to just mention quickly is that I attended the Port Commission meeting yesterday. And, you know, it was, I think it was a very productive meeting and a really important meeting to have with a representative from the Port of Anchorage, or Alaska, however you would like to say it, but was there and talking about how the 2 ports can work together. And just from the governor, I would just like to communicate that we are hoping as a state that the 2 ports can come up with a way to work together that's beneficial for both ports. It seems like in Alaska we have a history of kind of fighting for our own piece of the pie, and sometimes that keeps us from moving forward as a state. So I know at some point you'll be reflecting and making some decisions on how the 2 ports can work together. And so I hope that can be a situation where you can work together to move forward on that. And that's about all I have tonight, but I'm happy to take any questions if you have any. And I don't expect that you will, but all right. Well, I will watch the rest at home and probably some more tomorrow because you'll go past my bedtime. But have a good evening and thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. The next, we have a presentation from the Matsu Convention and Visitors Bureau. Bonnie, go ahead.
Thank you. Members of the Assembly, Mayor DeVries, Manager Brown, I'm here tonight to give you an update on the activities of the Matsu Convention and Visitors Bureau and a forecast for the coming summer visitor season. Early indicators are that 2022 will be a successful one for the visitor industry, to include the return of cross-Gulf of Alaska cruises and highway travelers, and a gradual return of international visitors and business travel. The largest hotel in the borough, the Mount McKinley Princess Wilderness Lodge, was closed for the last 2 summers. It will reopen on May 12th and is predicting a good year, but below 2019, which was a very strong summer, with bookings picking up each month of the summer, September being the strongest. Headwinds and uncertainties include: how will COVID affect 2022? Canadian border visitor restriction policies, staffing shortages, supply chain issues, and rental car fleets, and Denali Park Road impacts. We also anticipate a more competitive environment from tourism promotion from other destinations. But there is a pent-up demand to travel to Alaska, and airlines have increased air capacity by 6% over 2019. The last 2 summers, we focused solely on the independent traveler. Matsu CVB's promotional efforts have increased traffic to our website 113% over 2019. We have focused on SEO, digital advertising, and weekly added new content, including blog posts and user-generated content on our website. This has increased requests for our visitor guide and subscribing to our e-monthly bulletins, our newsletter, over 25%. As your partner for over 35 years, the Matsu CVB provides the trip planning tools for a visit to the Matsu Valley. This week, 60,000 visitor guides are being mailed to visitors requesting more information from the Travel Alaska State Tourism website. In February and March, our print advertisements in ARP, Travel and Leisure, and Outside magazines have produced over 3,000 requests for our visitor guide. We also attended the Holland America Alaska Destination Showcase Consumer Show in Seattle last month, distributing trip planning information to cruisers looking to add land excursions and extend their stay. During the pandemic, we ramped up our in-state resident and visiting friends and relative campaign. We will be activating our Trails theme campaign in late May in geo-targeted online and a print campaign. Last month, we participated in 3 in-state consumer outdoor shows in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and the Matsu. We are active on our 4 social media channels with over a dozen posts weekly, adding to our robust calendar events page too. Last month, we hosted the Alaska Travel Industry Association Board of Directors and Marketing Committee meetings in Talkeetna. We predict this past winter will have a strong impact on bed tax collections. As you move into the borough budget process, we submitted our FY23 budget and program of work to the borough manager on March 24th. It's including a status quo appropriation of $750,000. These past 2 years, we were funded with a federal CARES grant and forecast the bed tax will exceed pre-pandemic collections, which have historically funded tourism promotion and tourism infrastructure. The Matsu CVB Board of Directors met in late February to outline a plan for recovery and set priorities. The number one priority is to reinstate the 3-year grant agreement that was in place when the pandemic hit. We have 2 major tourism opportunities heading our way: the 2024 Arctic Winter Games and the encouraging EDA grant to complete the construction of the Gateway Visitor Center. Our organization has been instrumental in bringing these economic opportunities to the borough. A 3-year grant allows us the ability to plan and support the successful completion of these events. Our request is for the administration to bring forward a resolution in support of reinstating our 3-year grant agreement before June 30th. As we look to the recovery of tourism, I am excited to share that we received notice on March 11th. We were awarded a $100,000 American Rescue Plan Act nonprofit recovery fund from the state to develop a sustainable tourism master plan. After an RFP process, the contract was awarded to McKinley Research and Huddle to facilitate 4 town hall meetings, complete a resident tourism sentiment survey, and stakeholder focus groups and interviews. The final report will be due by June 30th, and it will identify long-term strategies to help us achieve our fullest economic potential in recovery from the pandemic. COVID changed the way people travel and where they travel. It is expected to have lasting implications of the destinations that they choose. We are fortunate to be awarded this grant and plan for our future success. I immediately reached out to the manager to ask for a borough representative to be on the leadership team guiding this process, and I thank you for that. I look forward to sharing the recommendations and opportunities of the report to you in July. And finally, I want to share a short 2-minute video we recently produced to highlight and communicate what it is exactly what we do. Our name is confusing. We don't operate a convention center. but our mission is to provide assistance to small meetings and conventions. Residents don't see our promotional efforts because we highly target our online and print outside of the borough. We wanted to connect the dots to the value of a visitor to our destination and the economic impacts of tourism promotion. And I think the clerk has it keyed up to share this short 2-minute video. Thank you.
Sorry.
Did you have any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a joint assembly school board committee on school issues update? No. Okay. Are there any public relation report? Oh, I'm sorry. Assemblyperson Hale, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to say that the Butte cleanup is the weekend of the 14th, and the Lazy Mountain cleanup is the following weekend of the 21st. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public relations reports? Okay, Mr. Brown, do you have a report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick update. I appreciate Mr. Smolden bringing up the Port Commission meeting. We did have that yesterday. We will be bringing a port update to the Assembly. The current plan for that is May 3rd at our next regular meeting. Under the manager's comments, that will give you some updates on some of the things that we shared there. We did have good attendance. Representative McCabe was there. We had representative from the Muni there from the Port of Anchorage. We also had the Ocean Renewable Power Company there to present on what they're looking to do out at Port McKenzie for testing. And also folks from, I think, Cruise Construction, and I might be missing some others, but it was a well-attended meeting. And we had a good conversation and went for over 2 hours. So it was a pretty robust discussion. I'm going to shift gears now and talk a little bit about the West Susitna Access Road public engagement. I heard a click. I'm good. I was tasked by the Assembly, I believe in December of 2021, to provide a forum for the public to comment on the West Susitna Access Road project. So we launched an effort in late January through March 31st of this year to go out and engage with the community and collect feedback on that project. So the results of that are in a flyer. I believe there are copies in the back. It's posted on the website, so it's available to the public. Summary of comments, participation. We did establish a website, an email list, and a mailing list. We received over 1,300 comments, collected 550 email addresses, and there were 326 meeting attendees at 2 virtual public meetings. We also had 2 newspaper articles that were written in the Frontiersman and ADN on the topic, and there were over 4,400 website views from folks around the community. The outreach did include 6 line. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, let me pause for a second there, around the outreach, because I think that was one of the criticisms that was brought forward, is that we did not reach out and make folks aware of the project and that this may be happening, or what was already in the process of happening. So our outreach included 6 online ads with a total of over 160,000 impressions with over 400 clicks. Postcards were sent to 13,200 addresses, including property owners and residents in Big Lake, Point McKenzie, Houston, Willow, Alexander Creek, and Squintna on 2 different occasions. Email notices were sent to the ADA project list, so those folks that had already signed up for communications for the project. There was a Facebook post to the Borough Facebook page for both public meetings, which with our followerships, I think somewhere around 24,000. And then we did meeting reminders via email to our subscriber list. So I think, when you consider January through the end of March, that's a fairly significant outreach and a fairly significant feedback in such a short period of time. So I'm just going to share just a couple of comment highlights. You can read the report for yourself. There were a few questions. One of the questions was, do you support the road? I guess my takeaway there was I did see a noticeable difference between the public testimony that was provided at the December Assembly meeting in terms of the number of folks that were here in the chambers that opposed the project compared to what we received based on the recent public involvement effort. I think that was generally about 80% opposed in December. And I'm not suggesting to you that the public's changed its sentiment. I just think we got a different outreach. Right now, that number is at about 60% opposed based on that question over the past couple months and the feedback that we received. The predominant themes were that the majority of the responses described a relationship to the project area as recreation, hunting, and fishing. So it's kind of interesting, that idea of mining versus access and what that may do for folks. It seemed folks were more focused on the recreation, hunting, and fishing aspects of the project. The main themes for opposing the road were environmental damage, financial problems, and the negative effects of access. The main themes for supporting the project were improved access and just general support for the project. So what's next? We will share this data, already have shared this data with ADA as they prepare their permit application for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So as they move forward with that 404 permit application, this information will be provided to them to be provided to the district engineer as that will likely initiate the NEPA process. And additional public noticing surrounding that process. So just because we went out and took on this effort does not mean that they still don't have to go through all of the public involvement and noticing requirements associated with the NEPA process. So that will continue again, and folks will be hearing more as they initiate that process. Also, ADA has informed us that they do expect to conduct an independent economic analysis. So that was one of the criticisms also that was lobbied a few months ago, was that ADA had done an in-house economic analysis. And I think there were some folks that were calling that into question and really the veracity of it. And so they have reached out to UA, and they are looking at having an independent third party conduct an economic analysis associated with this project. So I think those are things that we're going to see here coming up in the near future. I would like to take a moment to recognize Camden Yaley from Yaley and Associates. She really did all the heavy lifting, and I appreciate Brad Swartz. He was also a big part of that from this project team. I think they did a really good job. I'm very pleased with the amount of outreach and the amount of comments that we received in such a short period of time. So I am hopeful that this meets your intent as the Assembly in terms of tasking and what you expected from this effort with regards to improving our public engagement surrounding this project. So I'll pause for a moment in case there are any comments or questions before I move on.
Assemblyperson Hours.
Thank you. I just had a moment to look at it, and at first I just wanted to compliment the work that was done on this. This is really sort of impressive, just first glance, easy to read. One thing I would suggest, because this is going forward to Ada, is when I look at these pie charts, there's no numbers on them. So I'm just kind of guessing, is that 60% or 67%? And I just was looking at the, people who were no, yes, and then yes, but only if it's public. And if there's a way to include that information, that goes forward to Ada.
Yeah, so through the mayor to Ms. Nowers, if I may real quick, we do have that data. We actually talked about that as a project team. We did include the total number of responses so that there was some context. But what we kind of wanted to try and avoid was this idea that you're voting for or against the project. So that's why we kind of pulled some of the numbers out to kind of show what the general sentiment was, but not trying to turn it into a poll, if you will. So we do have that data, and that certainly can be included. That was just something we were trying to communicate to the public, because if they take it in as in, oh, you conducted a poll and we said no, like that really wasn't the intent of the effort. It was really to summarize public sentiment in general. So just so you understand, that was intentional.
Follow up? I just have one other question. Is there, when the financial problems and the cost versus benefits, that was kind of a big thing we heard about in initial testimony. I just wonder if there's any further breakdown that is provided to them in terms of the specifics of what folks were looking for, or things they should be included or not included in a financial analysis. That would be helpful to pass along to Ada.
I'll ask if, do you, either of you have anything to add to that in terms of specifics? I don't have anything to add as a follow-up to that. You could come on up.
That's a really great question. And what I heard, and correct me if you heard differently, was that people really wanted a third-party cost-benefit analysis. And we heard that over and over and over and over. And to me, that was the crux of it. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. I just thought that might be useful information if Ada's looking at a economic impact analysis, to be able to pass on what the public input was as far as what that should include or who should conduct it, just the public comment on that particular issue.
Sure. And this of course is the super overview summary. So the entire block of data that was built this will go to the borough in a closeout documentation set. So if there's ever questions about where this came from or other things come up, or we want to pull out other pieces, it will be there.
Assemblyperson Hale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say that you guys did a heck of a lot better job at reaching out to folks than Ada did when they first when we were here the last time. I know that was a big complaint of mine. I just want to say thank you. You did a much better job. I appreciate it.
Assemblyperson McKee?
Can I speak for a second?
Is that okay if I recognize Assemblyperson? Yeah, go ahead online, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
wasn't trying to butt in. I just want to say the same thing. This is an unbelievable job of public outreach. I mean, when you look at these numbers here and look at all the numbers of the people that attended and responded, this is absolutely outstanding. Just curious question for Manager Brown. What do you think we spent on public outreach? You know, I mean, we obviously hired Yale and Associates there, and then we got some staff time. What's our estimated cost on what we spent for the outreach?
Yeah, so through the mayor to Assembly Member Yunt, approximately 45,000. We looked through the, really that was driven by the number of hours. Frankly, it was remarkable how many comments were coming in. Each individual comment that was received was acknowledged and replied to. So going through all that, sifting that, did entail quite a number of hours of work, just going through all of that, developing the mailing list, and then just executing all of that. So when I looked, I can't remember exactly what task it was, but the public involvement effort for phase 3 that Ada was looking to contract with their consultant was somewhere in the neighborhood of over $100,000. Now, obviously that would have been over a longer period of time, But, and I understand that $45,000 is a significant amount of money, but when you count up the number of hours and then just the mailings and all of the additional expenses associated with outreach, I think it was a pretty reasonable, it was a very reasonable amount of money to spend for an effort like this.
I want to say it again. You guys did an outstanding job. I think this is probably 45,000 the best dollars we've spent since I was elected. And I hope your whole team's listening, you know, Terry, Eric, Stephen, George, Mike, all you guys, Brad, you did an outstanding job. So thank you very much.
Assemblyperson McKee, thank you for waiting.
Sure. So 80% of the people that we talked to in December said no, they did not want it. And now after this, I'm just reiterating here. So now that we've gone through the public outreach process, we're down to 60% of people who don't want it. Is that right?
Through the mayor to Ms. McKee, I would say it's a little more balanced. You know, yes, I mean, it was approximately 80%. I think it was very one-sided when we were in here that evening. I think what you're seeing now is more balanced because there was a bigger net cast. So I think that that's fair. But again, I kind of want to reiterate, we had not gone out intended to use it as a poll. So I would kind of caution to that because it was really to kind of give you an idea of what public sentiment is surrounding it and why. Why do people oppose it? Why are people for it? I think there's some other interesting information in here that I didn't cover tonight. It was interesting for me to see when you look at the number of people that have undeveloped private property in the area, their desire for a road or access is different than those that already had developed properties or existing businesses. And to me, that it seems logical. So it's just kind of interesting to kind of have a little bit better sense for, well, what's driving, you know, somebody who might be for it or might be opposed to it. And frankly, most folks seem to be more centered around the recreational aspect of it, not the mining district and the economic output that potentially could create.
So is this pretty much it as far as getting public opinion on this? I mean, because it's where do we go from here kind of thing?
So what is next, through the mayor to Ms. McKee? What's next is to allow ADA to make their filing for the 404 permit application, which will trigger the NEPA process. The NEPA process as a federal process has its own public noticing and public involvement requirements. So that will take place and run its course as it should as they seek permits for this road. So that's what's next. I also expect to see something soon. And I say soon, within the next several months, of an independent third-party economic analysis. So I think those are probably the two bigger things we'll be looking for as we move forward. And I expect ADA will probably close in on a 404 application, possibly by the end of this month or sometime into early May is what we're currently expecting.
Thank you.
Questions?
Just to follow up on that, as part of the 404 process or other process, are we going to be asked to weigh in again?
Through the mayor to Ms. Nowers, I would expect so. I think there'll be an opportunity for agencies to comment and then also the public. So I do expect that there'll be some opportunity. I don't know that it would require the assembly to pass a resolution necessarily. We'll wait and see how the filing goes. But if that, I mean, I'm not feeling inclined to take a position on the project without coming back to the assembly, which would probably take the form of a resolution. So we'll see where that goes. What we wanted to do was close this process out as ADA was closing in on a 404 permit application so that we would have all of this completed and packaged and not running concurrently with a NEPA process, which could be very confusing to the public.
Any of the assembly people online have questions? Do you want to go on for your rest of your report?
I do,
sir?
and we're going to try to keep things moving. We understand there's a lot of public hearings tonight. I'm going to invite Kelsey Anderson up from our planning department. She's going to give you an update on the capital improvement program or CIP update. And I want to give some context. I know Ms. McKee wasn't on the assembly at the time, or Mr. Bernier, when this came up. This comes up every couple years when the borough goes out to solicit or to go out for public outreach to solicit input from the community around a CIP. And the CIP in the past has been this really large wish list of projects, some of which really have not a lot to do with the borough. So our planning staff's done a lot of work to try to create a better process that actually leads to outcomes that are useful and that we can do something with. And I'm going to allow Kelsey to kind of go ahead and walk us through that tonight. So she's going to do her best to be brief, but we wanted to give the assembly some update on these process changes before we start public outreach. And you're wondering, what are staff up to? So that's really the intent of the update tonight.
Manager Brown, and thank you, Mayor DeVries, and the members of the Assembly for having me up here tonight. As Manager Brown said, my name is Kelsey Anderson, and I am a planner under Kim Solian and Alex's teams. And I'm going to just give a brief update on what I have been working on for the CIP for the past year. What I'm going to go over is why we made the changes that we did, give you a little bit more context, what those changes look like, and then what you can expect to see from the CIP in the upcoming year. So one of the first projects that I was tasked with when I started here about a year ago was to just assess the capital improvement program and try to figure out what the planning department can do to move the CIP from that kind of wish list thing that it is now to an actionable list of publicly supported community infrastructure projects. So throughout my research, I found that nationwide communities are using their capital improvement programs to actually implement their community and their comprehensive and their community level plans. And they're doing that by evaluating and prioritizing infrastructure projects that have been nominated by the public and that have also been called out specifically in their plans that they've developed themselves. So this is somewhat close to what the borough has been doing for decades with its CIP, but we haven't quite gotten to the point where the borough's CIP is actually a useful document for planning for community infrastructure. So our communities overwhelmingly nominate road projects. And so without the power to complete the vast amount of projects on the list, it's really no surprise that the CIP in its current form is really just a disorganized wish list that takes up a ton of staff time and doesn't really have any real tangible outcomes. I really want to change that. My team really wants to change that. Which is why I've developed a new process for the public nominations that would redefine what a valid CIP project is and give the planning department a clear avenue for our plan implementation. So the primary change is that new criteria, and there are 5 of them that every CIP nomination moving forward has to meet before it even goes into the scoring phase. So those criteria are that each project must fall within borough powers. It cannot be considered routine maintenance or equipment replacement like for borough departments. The project must have a useful life of 5 years or more and cost at least $20,000. And the project must align with a goal or objective of a current assembly adopted plan. So our borough-wide comprehensive plan, community plans, master trails plans, things like that. So just to show what adding these criteria can do to the CIP, I went back to the most recently adopted document. There were 131 projects on the CIP list. Nobody really even kind of knew what was going on with it. Nobody knew where those things were coming from. So anyway, I put the new criteria up against those 131 projects, and only 17 would have actually made it onto the CIP list. So it's really a good step in the right direction to just have a manageable list of community-supported projects that the borough actually has the power to build and to provide for the communities. So yeah, those the list and the projects, once we've gone through that criteria, will then be organized into assembly districts, and then that project list is going to go back out to the public. They're going to help us prioritize it one more time, just to really get that transparency and that like input at the beginning with public nominations, as well on the tail end as we're trying to figure out what actually are the priorities of our residents for their communities, and go forward from there. So right now, the CIP, we are ready to move forward with going live with nominations. We've updated the form. There's a website that's updated as well. And so on August 1st, the CIP committee is going to start evaluating projects. The Planning Commission can expect the presentation of the CIP no later than October 15th. And then we'll bring that to the Assembly no later than December 1st for discussion. And then this is going to be the timeline annually moving forward. We're going to be accepting nominations on a rolling basis. Each year on August 1st, we'll start that evaluation process over again and reevaluate projects, things like that. So hopefully the new process provides a document that the public has helped prioritize and really gives the Assembly and the manager and departments a clear vision of community-supported projects. So when you move into the budget season and things like that, if there's money available for these community projects, you'll at least know what you can look towards first to see what you can do. And then what's up next for me and my team is that public education outreach. Like, we have a lot of work to do on educating community councils and even borough departments on these updates. So that's what we're going to be focusing on now that kind of the process has been built. So that's pretty much what I have for you right now. If you have any questions on the update, I'm happy to take them now, or you can get in touch with me later.
This is Moki.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
How does the RSA board RIP list gel with this list that you have?
So through the mayor to Mr. Two, this is Mike. This doesn't change the RIP process, the RIP list process for road service areas at all. That will remain in place intact as it is today. This is separate and independent from that process.
Follow up, sir.
No, that I thank you.
Assemblyperson Hours.
I just want to say thank you for the work put into this. I remember when I got in assembly and the CIP list came before me and I was like, what is this thing? Where's the priority? So I'm looking forward to seeing it and the process you've laid out and trying to involve the public and making it clear. I quickly looked at that webpage. So thank you for the work that's being put into making this an organized process and prioritizing.
Yep. My pleasure.
Further, yes, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you as well. This thing was as long as my arm or something. And this is going to be great. It'll be stuff we can actually do. So that'll be fantastic.
Further comments from the Assembly members? Anyone else online, Assembly? Okay. All righty. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
That's all for my comments tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, report, sir.
I promise not to take an hour. So just a couple of brief reports. First, redistricting. As it pertains to the borough's issues, no changes. The board did adopt a map that resolved what we call the Cantwell cutout. It readjusted the lines to follow the corporate border of the Denali Borough to come down, meet Matsu Borough, follow the corporate line of the Matsu Borough over and realign the House district to do that. That eliminated the Cantwell cutout. As you've seen in the newspaper, they adopted it by a 3-2 vote, Senate pairings in Anchorage. There was a motion filed in the Superior Court by those plaintiffs challenging that action. I won't be reporting on it anymore unless there's anything that affects our matters. I will be paying attention to what's going on just for general awareness of what's going on in Anchorage, but nothing that's going to be pertaining to us, so I won't be reporting on it anymore. The other news is that while the entire assembly changes and the mayors change, certain things live on. In 1998, we entered into a timber sale contract with a timber harvester named Charlie Nash up in Chugach. He was supposed to harvest 1,000 acres a year. In 2002, the borough became worried that because he wasn't harvesting, the forest was going to get overripe and forest fires and not be harvestable. So we terminated his contract. He filed an appeal to the BOA, who at the time had jurisdiction over those matters. In 2003, he sued us. We won that case, went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, well, the BOA did something wrong, so we got to start over. From 2007 to 2013, we were litigating in Superior Court. 2013, we entered into a settlement agreement, entered into a new 5-year timber sale contract with Mr. Nash without harvest requirements. Near the end of that, he then came to the borough in 2018 and said, hey, extend my contract. Rather than extend his contract, we let it expire. And the Borough Assembly elected to enter into a new contract with Mr. Nash, which the borough then terminated the following year for non-performance. That's 2019. That same year in 2019, in October, he sued us for $8 million. Was not covered by insurance. And most of the employees who had dealt with Mr. Nash over the years, especially way back to 1998, were gone. Today, we got a ruling from the Anchorage Federal District Court dismissing all of his claims with prejudice, which means all of his claims against us for the $8 million case he brought, alleging all these years and years and years of horrible activities were dismissed. I'll be emailing that opinion out to the members of the Assembly. And Ms. Shannon Beaudelet of my office was the one who did all of the heavy lifting on this. Mr. Ashenbrenner did pitch in. Other lawyers did pitch in. There was a lot of work to be done on this case. It literally took hundreds and hundreds of hours of our time over the past couple of years dealing with this. But today we got an order of dismissal. So that's a pretty big deal for us. It was a big claim against the borough. Wasn't covered by insurance. So that's my report for the night.
Sorry.
I just had one question. You said dismiss with prejudice. Does that mean he's going to pay our attorney fees?
So we are going to move for fees. Started working on that today. Got to gather up all of our records, deposition fees, court fees, copying fees, filing fees, and then attorney time. And we're going to move for fees. I'll keep you informed as to what happens. At the end of the day, getting a judgment against someone is a piece of paper saying they owe you money. Then you have to find assets to try to collect. But we'll keep you informed. But yes, we are most definitely moving for fees.
Line that has questions for the attorney? Madam Clerk, you got a report for us?
The clerk's report is in your red folders. At the last meeting, Assemblymember Yunt requested that we change the May 5th budget deliberation meeting to May 4th. Is that something the Assembly would like to do?
What day of the week is May 4th?
Is there,
May 4th is a Wednesday.
instead
I'd
of
like to-
Thursday?
Yeah, I don't know how we do this thing, but I think Wednesday's better. For me, anyway, it is.
Is that acceptable to you?
The 4th, yeah.
Objections? Anybody online have objections? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, I guess.
I will go ahead and change that meeting, and it's that time of year again where the managers, the clerk, and the attorney's evaluations are coming up. I would like to suggest May 17th at 4 o'clock for the manager, June 7th at 4 o'clock for the attorney, and June 21st at 4 o'clock for the clerk. Are these meetings that the Assembly would like to schedule?
I will
Yes.
be out of state for my grandmother's funeral until the 8th, I believe, but the attorney's doing a pretty good job, so.
Okay, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
You talked really fast, or just like I do, and I didn't get those dates. Could you say them again, please?
These are right before the regular meetings. I guess I should have added that. So on 5/17, before the regular meeting at 4 o'clock would be the manager's evaluation. Before the regular meeting on June 7th at 4 o'clock would be the attorney. For the regular meeting on June 21st at 4 o'clock would be the clerk. And I will definitely send out a new schedule to you guys. You don't have to have them written down.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the assembly? Any comments from the assembly people online? Okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
That was it.
That's your report?
That was it.
Okay. All right. Any questions to the clerk regarding her report or anything? Assemblyperson McKee, is your light just on because of
I'm sorry,
previous
I was not paying-
questions?
Whoops.
Okay, thank you. All righty. The next item on our agenda is citizens and other correspondence. Is there any comments on the reports that we have? Okay, hearing none, they are presented. Madam Clerk, would you read the IMs into the record, please?
I will. I am 22078, reporting the conclusion for contract for bid 21134B with Orion Construction Incorporated for a final contract amount of $366,005.27 for the Old Station 6-2 sprinklers and remodel project. I am 22099, reporting the conclusion of contract for bid number 21140B with Alaska Demolition LLC for demolition and site remediation for Butte properties located in the Matanuska River hazard erosion area. I am 22104, informing the Assembly of a grant agreement with Sunshine Transit for $130,000 in match funding for the Federal Transit Authority grant they received for the purchase of a new transit facility that will be presented to the manager for signature. And I am 22105, informing the Assembly of the grant agreement with the City of Wasilla in the amount of $1,486,393 for the Wasilla Multimodal Depot that will be presented to the manager for signature.
Are there any comments on the IMs? Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
Mine aren't necessarily comments, but questions. The purchase of a new transit facility. I don't, what do we got? Do we, like I could get on a bus at Fred Meyer's and go to somewhere? I mean, is that what, I didn't know we had such a service. I know we used to have twos, bus transit, but what is this?
Have a staff to talk? Okay.
Roughly about transit provision in the borough. So we have about 15 different transit providers that provide service across the borough. Most of them operate a call-in response service. So people schedule a ride in advance and then will be picked up. There are a few routes that are run regularly between Palmer and Wasilla. I can't speak to Sunshine's Transit's regular routes down Valley, but they may have some, as well as Chickaloon Native Village, who runs a route from Glacier View to Palmer and then on to Anchorage. I think they have a regular route, and then they also do the call-in response. So the facility for Sunshine Transit, they were replacing their bus barn depot. They wrote for a grant to get a new building to upgrade the facility that they currently have.
So is that going to increase the number of routes and such, and are all these private entities?
That I can't say. At the time, right now we are advertising or reviewing proposals to do a coordinated human services transportation plan to assess how all the providers are doing, where the service gaps are, what the needs are, and then we'll work with them to try to help fill those gaps. We will also be looking at a general transit plan for the borough that will have a kind of a deeper conversation about what else is needed as we grow as a community, but I can't speak to their numbers. I don't know if I'm looking at Pam because sometimes she has more contact with the providers, but I can't speak to their ridership.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments on the IMs? Anyone online? Comments on the IMs? Okay, hearing none, the IMs are presented. We do not have any persons to be heard. We will now move into public hearings. And Madam Clerk, would you read the first item for public hearing, please?
Ordinance 22047, an ordinance providing for the composition, form of representation, and apportionment of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly, and submitting the question to the qualified voters of the borough at a special election of July 12, 2022, and then amending MSB 2.12010 concerning assembly election districts. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, is there a staff report? No. Oh, there's Pam.
Madam Mayor and Assembly, I'm Pamela Graham, Grants Coordinator. The item before you is the staff proposed reapportionment plan. This plan was developed using the existing Assembly districts as a starting point. During the process, we attempted to keep all Assembly and school board members within their elected districts, while also working to ensure that the districts were compact, contiguous, and as near to the target population of 15,297 as possible. Given the population growth in the core area, this was challenging. Unfortunately, our proposed plan moves the school board member from District 6 into District 1, the member from District 5 into District 3, and the member from District 3 into District 6. This means we were unable to keep 3 school board members within their elected districts. As the plan was developed, staff took into consideration House district lines that are used to create the voting precincts. We reviewed census blocks to ensure that they did not cross directly through a house or structure. We considered the number of American Indian and Alaska Natives, as well as Hispanic and Latino residents of the citizens within each district at the start of the process and again when we were completed. This was done to ensure that the changes we proposed would not negatively impact our minority populations. Between January and March, staff developed a number of plan variations. However, our process was delayed longer than anticipated, awaiting state precinct lines. In March, upon receipt of the state precinct information, we began modifying our initial plans to eliminate as many split precincts as possible. At the start of that process, version 1 of the plan before you tonight had fewer than any of the others, so we used that as our starting point. We met with the Division of Elections and were able to show them the areas and the shape of the census blocks that were resulting in split precincts, and they were willing to make some minor adjustments to their precinct lines in those areas to help us eliminate those precincts that were split with Assembly district boundaries. We have been on a short time frame, beginning with the delay of the census information, lawsuits over state redistricting, to awaiting the Division of Elections to create precincts. Staff are proposing a special election on July 12th. One of the main reasons for the special election is so that in November, when we are with the state, we do not have a precinct split by Assembly district lines, which would cause multiple ballots in a majority of the precincts. We cannot wait to have the election on the same day as the state primary because candidate filing for the November election starts at the same time in August. The proposed plan has an overall deviation of 8.29%. It will allow fair and equal representation, does not attempt to place all minority populations in one district, keeps all Assembly members within their districts, pairs socioeconomically integrated communities together in a district while still allowing Assembly members the ability to meet with their constituents without crossing through multiple other districts. Thank you.
This is a staff report. Okay, all right. Thanks, Pam. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance 22-047. We didn't have anyone sign up for it, but that doesn't preclude you from coming to testify. Each one of you will have 3 minutes, and then we'll go. Caleb, do we have people online? We do not. Okay. And if you'd keep your testimony at this time just to ordinance 22-047. And the maps are all up here too also. So I'll open the public hearing. Don't see any, I don't know. I see a little bit of movement, but not coming this way. So, all right. And again, no one online. Is that correct, Caleb? Okay. Righty, then I guess we'll go ahead and close public hearing. And Assemblyperson or Deputy Mayor Sumner, would you move, please?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-047.
Okay.
And
And then I think we do have some amendments, correct,
do.
sir? Okay.
I move to amend ordinance serial number 22-047 as follows. Section 4, by replacing the current language with the following. A, the Borough Assembly shall consist of 7 members elected from 7 separate districts as depicted in the official map. Section 5 by replacing the current language with the following. The Borough Assembly adopts the official map included with this ordinance as the boundaries of the respective assembly districts. Section 6 by replacing the current language with the following. Based upon the final boundaries as adopted by the Assembly, the Borough Clerk shall cause to be prepared and posted at each polling place for the July 12th, 2022 special election, a map depicting the boundaries of each election district.
Okay, so the discussion now at the assembly level is regarding this amendment to ordinance 22-047. So discussion on the amendment by the assembly. Anyone online?
This is Yunt. May I speak?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
So I see this amendment is at the request of the clerk's office. I was going to see if she could please speak to this.
Sure.
Give us a clarification on it, please.
Sure, thank
I
you.
will tell you what I do know about it, but I might have Ms. Graham expound on it a little bit. What is in code right
Of
now?
course.
What we have in code right now is basically the assembly district are spelled out with a legal description. We were trying to get somebody involved in replacing that legal description. We were not able to find anybody to do it timely, nor anybody that could do it within the next couple months. Plus, it was going to cost, I do believe, about $40,000 more than we had budgeted for. People generally use the maps anyway, so we decided to go with the maps rather than the actual legal description. Did I say it all, Pam? Okay.
Further follow-up, sir?
No, thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Comments by any other assembly members regarding the amendment? Yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think switching to the maps is going to be just fine. I mean, there may be a couple of cases where the line goes through somebody's house, and obviously there's not fine enough detail on the map to distinguish where they are, but, I mean, it's probably going to be a very exceptional case, so I think we should do it.
The comments or questions by the assembly?
And the lines mostly follow roads and rivers, so yeah, it should be fine.
Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote. Is there any objections to the amendment? Hearing no objection, then the amendment passes. So now you have before you ordinance 22-047 as amended. Deputy Mayor.
I move to amend ordinance serial number 22-047, the map, by moving precincts numbers 36-030 and 29-720 into District 7. And I'd speak to the amendment. District 7 is by far the greatest deviation on population as far as underpopulated. And by moving these districts from moving these precincts from Assembly District 1 to Assembly District 7 will reduce the total overall deviation substantially. So I do think that we should do this. It creates what is essentially a rural District 7 and a more core area District 1, but it will still include the Sutton-Chickaloon area, so.
Okay, discussion on the amendment. Yes, Assemblyperson Hale, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had some questions. Well, I mean, honestly, I'd like to hear what the assembly member from District 7 thinks about driving out to Lake Louise. I know I don't necessarily have the time to get out there a whole awful lot. But more of a technical question, I guess, is how many folks live on the that'd be the western border of the 29-720 up along there. I think that's mostly the population centers have been avoided in that district line. Is that correct? Everyone lives in Talkeetna or on the other side of the line there?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I believe his adjustment will move around 200 people.
Yeah, I was
Total.
looking at the precinct. I was looking for the precinct maps, but you can't find them unless you go to the Division of Elections.
So
like
precinct
you guys did.
36030 has 7 people total in it right now.
7?
Which is the very top part that was part of that Cantwell cutout in the state redistricting. The remaining people live within the other precinct. And we do have a map that we can show and visualize if you'd
there's
like.
about 200 people in 29720 then.
I believe, I don't have the exact
That
numbers.
sounds about right. It's the Alpine Lake Louise really is kind of where all those folks are centered, though, I guess is kind of more towards the point of what I'm trying to get at. I think the eastern line follows some river drainages.
That's correct.
And it skips all of Talkeetna and Willow, and it skips out all those folks are on the other
is
side of the
correct.
line. Is that so? I guess I would offer a secondary amendment to delete 29-720 just based on the travel that the assembly members from District 7 would have to do to get to Lake Louise or to get to Alpine. Basically, they would have to come all the way down from, wherever they're at. If they're up around Talkeetna or Trapper Creek or something, that's a long ways to go down through Palmer, all the way out to Lake Louise. I think that would be an undue burden on that particular assembly member, but I guess that would be the nature of my amendment, would be to delete 29-720.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
If I could, to the assembly, the map that's in front of you in reference to this amendment actually has the precinct numbers on it. Those 29-720 is the precinct. So when the state redistricting board redrew the northern part of that district, 36030 was going to be part of a precinct that was in Cantwell with 7 people in it. The state more than likely is going to move that area, now that the redistricting board did this, back into 29-720. So we'll end up with another split precinct. So the people that live in 3630 and 29-720, their precinct is Glacier View. I just wanted to clarify that with the assembly.
Assembly Person Hale, did you have a comment?
I would just say that the reasoning, I think, is still sound to keep that. And I'm not doing myself any favors here. Those folks did not vote for me. But I go to their community council meetings and I drive out to their community council meetings at Lake Louise sometimes, about 4 times a year. And I think it would be very difficult for the person from number 7 to get out that way.
Okay.
Amendment still standing?
Yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
If the secondary amendment is still standing, I just want to clarify with the assembly, you're creating an assembly district split inside of precinct. So we'll have assembly districts 1 and 7 within 29-720. I just want to clarify that. We'll have more double ballots at that precinct.
Assembly Person Hale, go ahead. sir.
So they're moving the district, or they're moving the 36030 boundary back up to the
Borough boundary line. More than likely,
Borough
what they're going to
boundary
do
line.
is suck 3630 into 29-720. So it's going to be one big precinct again, like it is right now.
So if they did that and precinct 29-720 was in District 1, and then those folks would be in my district, those folks up there in Cantwell.
No. I wish I had something to show you. You mind if
Well,
I get up?
if we eliminate, if they eliminate 36030 from our consideration, I guess.
Well, if I can clarify, that is part of the borough. So what they're doing is they're going to move the green area here for precinct 29-720. They're going to move it north to the borough boundary.
And 29-720 would be in District 1.
Well,
On a staff proposed
That-
plan, yes. On Assemblymember Sumner's proposal, no, it would be in District 7.
So what you're saying is in order to avoid a split precinct, we would need to keep both of these in
One
its,
assembly,
its current configuration.
one assembly district, one or the other, depending on what the assembly decides.
Okay, well, I guess I will withdraw my amendment if there's no objection to that.
Okay, is there any objections to him withdrawing his secondary amendment?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Assemblyperson Howard, you had a comment?
I guess I just look at this and you're going to have a split precinct, but you've got 7 people that are going to, you got 7 people in 36030 that are going to be your split. So you don't have a huge number of people that are, you would have 2 ballots, but I just look at the geography and I agree with Assemblymember Hale that you got 200 people in that one area. You want to pair them with District 7, which is mostly Parks Highway, and you want that person representing those people to try to get all the way out Lake Louise makes no sense to me. No, I mean, I get the sense that you're doing, but I don't think that's necessarily a good way to go for their representation. And then that top piece with the 7 people in it, that's accessed by the Denali Highway. So it's far away from the Glen Highway. It kind of makes sense to me to move that over, even though it does split the precinct, but it's kind of minimal. I guess that's my thoughts on it. Is Assembly Member from District 7 on tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I am.
So,
I am.
so if I may, I am cognizant of the geographic issues that this entails, but I would just like to point out we did just end a lawsuit that we had engaged in against the state redistricting board. And one of our claims was that they had unfairly over deviated us. And yet we are here passing a redistricting plan that has a higher deviation than is actually necessary. Now, this is the only modification within the stipulations that the assembly set that we can make that will not split state precincts. So given that, I and the principle of one person, one vote, and getting as close to that as possible, I do think that this would still be advisable. And the question of splitting, I mean, the two need to go together, but in one or the other. But I would just encourage that, given that lawsuit and the principle, that we do this. And that in order to get to Lake Louise, you do have to leave the Matsu borough if you're going by road. So you already have to leave the borough.
Any of the assembly people online that would like to testify?
This is Young. I guess my one question would be, how many people were in each before, and what would this do to help even it up?
To Assemblymember Yant, I don't think we could tell you what was there before because these lines are all different, but it does make the deviation 0.2% less than it was before. And if Ms. Graham has anything to add,
Assemblyperson
That's good.
Hale?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the specific deviations were for, what's the specific deviation for District 7 and the specific deviation for District 1?
On the staff proposed plan, District 7 has a deviation of minus 4.45%, and District 1 has a positive deviation of 0.44%.
So those are all within 5%.
Yes.
Standard deviation, which I think when we were talking to the attorney, really would qualify and I think does qualify as well within the standard deviation. It's not as egregious as it was the job that the state did to us. And so I would just argue, and again, like I said, those folks didn't vote for me, but I think they deserve someone who lives a little closer, and I'm going to vote against this, I think.
Hours, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about what is the optimal amount of people in a district? Sorry.
The target population is 15,297.
So about 15,000 people in a district, and this would change it by 200? So
roughly. It would drop our deviation from 8.29% to 8.09%
overall.
overall.
Okay. And so I guess I appreciate the effort to try to be, if we're making our case to the state, but I think somebody could look at this and say, that's a pretty small deviation gain. And they would look at the geography and say, you've got the highway trying to make somebody teleport themselves between those two areas. Unless they have a helicopter, that's a tough area to serve. So I'm going to be against this at this point.
Deputy Mayor?
I call the question and
Okay. Okay, the question has been called. Is there any objection? No objection, so we're ready to vote.
I can get the assembly members in the room to go ahead and vote. Assemblymember Yunt,
Yes.
Assemblymember 2,
Yes.
Assemblymember Bernier.
Yes.
It passed with Assemblymember Hale and Nowers opposed.
Okay. So now we have before us ordinance 22-047 as amended. Deputy Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I move to amend ordinance serial number 22-047, the map, by moving the line in the blue area shown on the map from precinct 36-030 into precinct 30-840, District 7, to make the Parks Highway the boundary.
Discussion?
And if I may, this is
I'm
a,
sorry, go ahead and speak to your amendment, sir.
this amendment's at the request of staff. It has to do with the change in the House district, so.
Any objections to the amendment? Yeah, hearing no objection to that amendment, then that passes. Again, you have ordinance 22-047 as amended before you. Any further amendments or any further discussion on that ordinance? Clerk? Is there any objection to the adoption of ordinance 22-047 as amended? Objections? So we're adopted. Okay, then I guess we're ready for the next public hearing when you are, ma'am.
Ordinance 22023, an ordinance authorizing the manager to enter into a long-term management agreement for a period of 25 years with the Alaska Sailing Club Incorporated for the purpose of management and use of borough land. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Is your staff report? Oh, there she comes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor,
Good evening.
Mr. Brown, and the Assembly and staff. My name is Nancy Cameron. I am the long-lived land management agent. Actually, I should say short-lived. I'll be retiring next week. I have my successor here listening in, and so she will be presenting to you in the future. So what we have before us is an organization that has been in business for a very long time, doing very good things for the community. The Alaska Sailing Club has a clubhouse out at Big Lake and has been utilizing adjacent borough land of 1.6 acres to accommodate their events. When they have them, they do classes, they teach sailing, they work with kids, they work with wounded warriors. They do a lot of really great things for the community out there. They've been under a temporary permit process since 2013 and would desire to have more longevity in their use of the property out there. And so we bring before you a long-term management agreement to enter into with this club for them to manage the 1.6 acres that they've been so carefully taking care of for us for the past 7 years. And under that management agreement, which is in your packet, the borough and or the sailing club does have the option to terminate that agreement with a 30-day notice, which is a nice option to have in case their organization disbands or whatever would happen. But we are recommending, because of the good stewardship of this organization and their cooperative efforts with the borough on projects at the Big Lake Boat Launch and the parking area, we are recommending Assembly to consider approval of this.
Sorry, my things are. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance 22-023. And we do not have a sign-up sheet. We don't have a sign-up sheet, but that doesn't preclude anyone present to testify. Okay, seeing no movement. Caleb, do we have anybody online? Okay. So the person online, please go ahead.
Oh, my name is Eric Anderson. Thank you for taking my call. I guess my only concern with long-term leases on in regards to this amendment are if they're not open to the public, it seems to me like long-term leases that are over 5 years don't do the community much fairness if the public is not involved. If it's not open to the public where the public can't use the land, or if it's not an action that doesn't require you to pay, then I could see that this long-term lease would be sufficient. But if we're getting into long-term leases, especially one that's a quarter of a century, I would advise that the public would be able to use the land, or maybe the sailing club could coordinate with the public on specific days open to the public, or specific stipulations where the public can have access at certain times for maybe to reduce costs or something. But I'm opposed to a 25-year long-term lease on any kind of land that the public is not collectively included in. Thank you. Sir, if I can get you to press the button until it turns green. Thank you.
Got it. Hey, Madam Mayor and members of the Assembly, thanks. My name is Jeff Wright. I'm actually the current Commodore of the Sailing Club, and we got two past Commodores right there, Matt Flickinger and TL Stanbro, and I just wanted to speak to the comment. Although we are a club, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, we do actually have a membership fee. It is, we do have events during the summer that are open to the public. And in addition, we have a membership fee, but it is for a family membership for the summer, it's $500. For the single membership for the summer, it's $250. It includes use of all our boats and all our facilities, and it's carefully calibrated to be as low as it possibly can be, just in keeping with our mission to make sure that anybody who wants there can be there, and we can maintain our equipment. We actually have, as part of the club, we have a whole series of boats that are open there to all the members. We carefully qualify them. So, we try to be as open as we can. And in fact, kind of above and beyond our sailing mission, just as recent examples of us engaging with the public, we actually, when we had the search and rescue effort out there last summer, the club was actually used as a staging ground for both the dive operation and the search dogs that were out when they were doing our quarter of the lake. And in addition to that, we engaged in a 3-year-long project with Fish and Game, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, money from the Alaska Sustainable Salmon Fund, to redo the shoreline at the club, which was kind of a salmon hostile gabion basket wall, to being a much more fish-friendly arrangement. When we did that, we actually extended the effort to cover the area that we had been using with the borough. And as part of that, to this day, we actually work with other landowners out there who are doing the same thing and open up our property so that, Fish and Game can bring them down there and show them what it looks like and kind of, how we went through the process. So we try to be as open to the public as we possibly can be.
Thank you.
And if you guys had, and hopefully that at least speaks to the question. I don't know if it alleviates the concerns or not, but if you guys have any other questions too, like I said, we've got a lot of folks here with a lot of experience at the club, so we'll try to answer.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on ordinance 22-023? You have anybody else online, Caleb? Okay, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and Deputy Mayor, would you move, please?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-023.
Is there any discussion in the assemblies?
I just had one question. My recollection from reading this was there is a public boat launch or public use right next to this land. And so and that would not be compromised in any way by this lease. There'd still be that public access right there.
Through the mayor to Assembly Member Nowers, that is correct. The public boat launch for Big Lake is just on the other side. It's all within that same lot. But there is a public use easement that separates them. So the public parking and the public boat launch is part of that same property, except that it's just on the other side of the public use easement is the 1.6 acres that the club has been using for basically parking for their events when needed, or when they set up booths, or when they have search and rescue folks. So it doesn't bleed, their parking doesn't bleed onto the public parking lot for the boat launch. So there's no conflict.
Further discussion by,
This is Ron.
yes, go ahead.
I think it's a good idea for the public's interest.
Further discussion by the assembly. Okay, is there any objections to approving this ordinance? Okay, hearing no objections, the legislation passes. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22036, an ordinance approving the less than fair market value sale of borough-owned real property identified as the Peggy Lake Residential Camp to the Anchorage Community YMCA. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Sure. Okay. Please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Manager Brown, Assembly. My name is Tracy McDaniel. I'm the Asset Manager with the Land and Resource Management Division. The legislation in your packet tonight is from an application from the YMCA. It's the Anchorage Community YMCA, which is a nonprofit group, and they have requested to purchase the property they've been leasing for the last 59 years on Peggy Lake. It's 131 acres. They have been using the property for all these years as a summer residence camp for the children's ages 8 through 14. The property has been developed with several cabins and other related buildings on site. Right now, they've always had a less than fair market value lease, and the lease rate has been $1,300 annually. And that's based off of the assessor's value of $130,000. And that was 1% of the $130,000. The YMCA, they provided an appraisal which gave the same value of $130,000. Since the YMCA is a nonprofit group, they qualify for the Matsu Borough, MSB 2310-060, which is a waiver of the application fee of $500, and MSB 2305-030, less than fair market value sale of the property. Staff is requesting that the assembly approve for the manager to convey the property to the YMCA for less than fair market value of $500, which will the conveyance document will have a reversionary clause that the property shall remain and be used for a public purpose, or the property reverts back to the borough. I would like to point out to the clerks that there is a typo on page 2, paragraph 1, and it referenced MSB 2305-030 is what it should be, and not 2310-060. You're going to have to restate that, because now I need to probably write an amendment to this. Okay. It's on page 2. Do you need to know the location? Page 2 of, the ordinance, thank you. Paragraph 1. Okay. And where it states, just the citing of code. Whereas the Anchorage Community YMCA paid a $500 application fee, which may be waived and used towards the minimum fee required in accordance with MSB, it should be 23.05.030. Thank you. Thank you.
And we don't have a sign-in sheet either, Pam. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-036. We do not have a sign-in sheet, but that's still, you're welcome to come and testify on ordinance 22-036. Yes, come forth, sir.
Madam Mayor, Assembly, I'm Jeremiah Hamrick. I would just caution the Assembly, since the previous ordinance just gave the sailing club 25 years access to free land. Before that, they were paying, I believe, $500 every 5 years. So I know it's good to be generous, but I would just caution the borough in giving away free land because there's, I think, at least 3 nonprofits asking for hundreds of acres of property. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there a hand over here where somebody wanted to testify? Just get up and come. Anyone else would like to testify? Caleb, do we have anybody online? Okay. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-036, and I have an amendment. I move to amend ordinance 22-036, page 2, paragraph 1, to change the reference to code to MSB .05.030.
Okay. Anyone like to speak to the amendment? Is there any objection? I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, this is the amendment that was just recommended by staff, so.
Is there any objection to passing the amendment? Everybody online, okay? Okay. So now we have before us ordinance 22-036 as amended. Discussion? Yes. Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
I was listening to the last gentleman, and it had kind of occurred to me before that. 130, this is on a lake? This camp's on a lake?
Tracy. That's my understanding, but
Yeah.
I'll allow the
Yes,
staff.
they've been leasing the property since 1963, or they've been leasing this land for 59 years, but close.
That was another one of my questions. For 59 years, we thought it was okay to lease. Why all of a sudden do we think it's not?
Well, these are recreational leases that the borough, through our municipal entitlement lands, we, this lease, when we accepted the patent to this land, it also came with the state DNR's lease, which is very old and has no protections for the borough. They're not, they do provide a certificate of insurance, naming the borough as additionally insured, but these are extremely old leases. They do not meet our standards today. It's recreational. I think that it would be a good idea for the borough to get out of the business of recreational leases. We have quite a few of them that we did get through our municipal entitlement lands, and they are being bought by the lessee. We have allowed this in code for many years, since when DNR
signed these leases back in the 60s and 70s, early 70s, they were for 55 years. So we were bound by those leases. We couldn't change anything. When I came on board as the asset manager in 2017, I've had about 4 or 5 of these leases that were expiring within a couple of months. So I was scrambling, and I extended those 4 to 5 leases for another 5 years so I could get my feet on the ground and figure out what's going on. So
if they were to go back and release, or ever how you say that thing, whatever, extend it, would be like another 55 years or?
that would be up to the assembly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could release it and have it under today's lease documents. Since they are a nonprofit, it would still be less than fair market value. So we'll still be looking at $1,300, maybe $1,500 annually.
And not to be legal, but so the Anchorage YMCA has the exclusive use of it. So basically that's off limits to the rest of the world at that point. Nobody else gets to use it.
Well, as long as it's used for a public
Yeah.
purpose, right? And that's what they serve, as a public purpose.
But only for a limited market, which is the Anchorage YMCA case,
The youth of,
Yeah. But only of Anchorage.
I can't answer that question. I couldn't tell you if it's just Anchorage or if they also serve the YMCA out here in Wasilla.
I would really like to know the answer to that because that would be important to me.
I was hoping that the representative from.
Guy behind you knows.
Oh, okay. I do have.
Good.
The applicant here. He can answer those questions.
Thank you.
I'm Larry Parker, the CEO of the YMCA of Alaska, and I've been there for 20 years, so I've been involved with Peggy Lake all that time. We do serve a lot of kids from Anchorage. We also have ran a day camp out of Wasilla the last 3 years, and they also will use that camp this summer. We haven't had camp the last 2 years because of COVID, but we've also had groups from out of state that come in. We've hosted both UAA women and men's basketball teams up there for team building. We have youth groups, church groups that utilize it as well. And we typically don't charge a fee for that type of usage. The fee structure that we have for camp at Peggy Lake it's not even structured to break even. We usually subsidize that camp very heavily with fundraising throughout the year. We've been operating that camp for over 50 years, except for the last 2. And sometimes when you're dealing with leased land, we have access to a lot of grant money and donations that we can help maintain and build the camp. When you're on leased land, that makes it extremely difficult. Nobody wants to give you money if it's not on land you own. So the last couple of years, as we reviewed the camp, became ideal if we could purchase that land. And then, I have a grant on my desk right now for $150,000, but they will only grant it if it's on owned land, not leased land.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion by the assembly. Assemblyperson McKee, do you still have follow-up? No? Okay. Okay, Assemblyperson Mowers.
Thank you. 2 questions. So if I understood you correctly, if the sale goes through and they no longer use it for a public purpose, it would revert back to the borough?
Correct. In Section 3 of the ordinance, it outlays what would be put in the exact language that would be put into the deed.
Okay.
So if it's not used, it reverts back to the borough.
Okay. And then the other question is if obviously there's a nice thing about this camp that can serve a lot of kids. So there's advantage to doing the sale this way. If it was to be put on the open market, this is up in the Willow area. So do we have any 131 acres, any sense of what that value would be?
In the future, or what it is?
If we were to put it on the market, I mean, the other option would be is this borough-owned land? We could put it on the market for sale as opposed to selling it to one entity? Is that an option?
There's no limits on the sale of the property. If they were to sell it or transfer it to a subsidiary of the Anchorage YMCA, whoever takes title to it would also take title to that restriction in the deed.
I'm asking a different question. If the borough were to put this on the open market now, 130 acres,
What would the value be?
Yeah.
That was established in the appraisal that the YMCA had done, and it is at $130,000.
okay, and
Was-
that's, sorry, just to ask one more follow-up question. So the amount we're selling it to them for?
Would be $500
500, okay.
as a
thank you.
nonprofit organization.
Thank you. It's not
Okay.
even late and I needed clarification. I appreciate
Sorry.
that.
It wasn't getting
Thank you.
Further discussion by the assembly? Any assembly members online have discussion? Is there any objection to passing this ordinance? Okay, hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Okay, Pam, go ahead.
Ordinance 22037, an ordinance reappropriating $200,000 for the fiscal year 2022 port operating budget to the Port Business Development and Marketing Project and extending the project completion date to June 30th, 2025. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press star 3.
Okay, staff report, go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Assembly members. I'm Teresa Dolan, the Port Operations Manager. The purpose of Ordinance 22-037 is to preserve $200,000 that is in the current, this year's operating budget. It was intended for marketing and business development. We have not yet used those funds. We would like to preserve them by moving them into a project account that would be designated for business development, and that would be good for another 3 years.
Okay, do we have a sign? We do not have a sign-up sheet. Okay. Assembly have any questions with staff? Yes. Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
So that $200,000 that the assembly voted in last year to do this very thing, we've not done actually anything with it?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee, no, we have not spent any of those funds yet.
How come we haven't been out looking for business
I
with that
had,
money?
I had other funds available that I used for the IMAPE strategic report that was done on the port, and we have been since working with that document. We have not yet needed to dip into it.
So that money that went to that IM, whatever that alphabet thing is, because I remember when they spoke to us, that was obviously paid for by something. What did that come out of?
And that also came out of my operating budget, out of other contractual funds that I
see.
have.
Okay. I guess that was just pretty much it. I was just wondering.
Excuse me?
I said, I guess that's pretty much it. I was just wondering that since it seemed like a good deal at the time, and I agree with that, 200,000 to go out and look for business, I'm kind of hoping that we can do that pretty soon.
I agree, and we want to use it judiciously. I don't want to just go spend it.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for the right time.
Okay.
Follow up? No? Okay. Any others? Assemblyperson Nowers, go ahead.
I just, I think I would rather see this go back into the operating budget and then have a,
Point of order, have we done the public hearing yet?
oh, I'm sorry.
We have not. No, this is questions for staff.
Okay, I do have one question on
Thank
that.
you,
If this goes back into the port operating budget and then you have a port marketing project, business development, you could still come to the assembly and ask for approval to do that outreach for funding, and it would come out of the operating budget as opposed to this fund.
What we're asking for is to take it from the operating budget and put it into a project account. If we left it in the operating budget, you're saying, if we had a need to spend it, we could, but only until the end of the fiscal year.
That's right.
Then it goes away.
Right.
Okay, Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, if it's not spent this fiscal year, then it lapses. Yeah, okay. Further questions? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
I like your reasoning. We set it aside for a specific purpose. I think it should stay there. Otherwise, it becomes like, I'm broke this week. I'm just going to take it out of there. So no, I think setting it aside is a good idea.
Assemblyperson Hale, go ahead, sir.
No, I was just going to say, we still haven't had the public hearing, so we probably shouldn't be speaking to our
Right.
opinions over it.
Yeah, okay. Righty, thank you. So we'll open the public hearing on ordinance 22-037. We don't have a sign-up sheet either, okay. Anyone is welcome to address the assembly on this ordinance. Do we have anybody online, Caleb? No, okay. Anyone like to address the assembly on 22-037? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-037.
Okay. Discussion. We had lots before. Let's see if we still have some left, huh? Yes.
Just one comment. I'm okay with leaving this, so it's in the budget, but before we spend money out of it, I just feel like we've had a lot of ideas swirling about the port, and I would like to have, if we're gonna go out and market it, like get something back to the assembly to describe what that's gonna be, and in more detail than just marketing is what I'd be looking for. But I'm okay with keeping this money there so we can use it if needed.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to amend section 2, line 3 by replacing the date June 30th, 2025 with June 30th, 2023.
Okay, there's an amendment to change the project completion date, is that correct, sir? To June 30th, 2023 instead of 2025. Is that correct? Okay. Discussion on that amendment. Yes, go ahead, sir.
And so that'll basically just keep this project fund from hanging out for 3 years. Can come back next year if the assembly then decides to extend it or whatever they can until 2025. But at least we'll get a little bit more oversight that way and see if the money's being used or if it's just hanging out in the budget.
Okay, discussion on the amendment. Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
Yeah, and just let me say that I agree with that, because if it hangs out there forever, then we've already gone a year and haven't made much progress, and maybe that'll kind of keep it a little more alive. And my other question is too, do the folks have to, for Teresa, do you guys let us know or somebody know what your proposal is? Like, I'm going to spend $50,000 on X.
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee, we can certainly do that, yes.
That'd be interesting.
It would go in front of the Port Commission first. They'll put a resolution with it that says what their thoughts are on it, and then it would come to you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any of the assembly people online have comments regarding the amendment? Okay, is there any objection to the amendment? Okay, hearing no objection, it passes. So now we have before us ordinance 22-037 as amended. Further discussion on that motion. Okay.
This is Moki.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
We appropriated that $200,000 to get the port moving instead of it just sitting there, just sucking up money. Mike, what is the Port Authority with Anchorage? Is that happening, or is this just like constantly just letting the port suck more money and keep rolling like that? Or are we actually trying to get business there? That was the whole intent of the $200,000.
Go ahead, sir.
Through the mayor to the assembly. I had mentioned that we were planning to do a port update on May 3rd. I would have brought my notes tonight if I Thought we were going to do that tonight. We were trying to inform the Port Commission before we came back to the Assembly with an Assembly update, just to honor the process and make sure that the Port Commission was included in updates. But generally speaking, I think the Regional Port Authority, to be blunt, is dead, because a regional port authority would require agreement from the bodies included in the authority. One, there's no enabling state legislation or anything around some state support that would draw us into that type of an arrangement. And the Muni has, I think, pretty clearly indicated that they're not interested in conceding any control or authority over the Port of Anchorage. So I think that kind of makes it impossible. I think the tasking from the Assembly was to go and evaluate that. We've done that. The mayor and I have met with the administration in Anchorage. We met with the port director and associated folks, and there is not interest. We've met with the governor and talked about this. So I don't think a regional port authority is in the cards. However, I do think there's an opportunity for agreement. Mr. Smolden spoke to that tonight a little bit, and we will talk about that in more detail on May 3rd. But essentially what it boils down to is an alliance, which is a non-binding agreement between the Muni and the Matsu Borough to pursue potentially some energy project or microgrid at Port McKenzie that leverages the real estate that we have to potentially develop a renewable energy project that would support the Port of Alaska. Now, what that looks like, I don't know yet, because the feasibility work behind that hasn't been conducted yet. But the Muni has indicated they believe that there is Department of Energy funding that's could be available to study that and see what it might take to come up with a renewable energy project that could then have a customer in the Port of Alaska. And ultimately down the line, it's adjacent to a federal military installation. So there's, other potential opportunity in that. There's some existing infrastructure across the inlet in terms of transmission lines that could be available to move that power. So we are crafting and have an agreement that we had intended to discuss with you on May 3rd about what that might look like. As I mentioned, it's not binding. So it doesn't require legislation. It doesn't require legislation at our level or at the state level. I want to be clear on that. But it does allow us to figure out what our common interests are and then move forward with collaborating or cooperating on those things, and still allow the ports to go and pursue business development marketing as they see fit. So yes, this 200,000, I'm going to come back to what we're really talking about here tonight. The 200,000 was set aside for business development. And I think Ms. Dolan used the term judicious. The intent wasn't to just go out, drop an RFP and pay a marketing firm $200,000 to deliver things that we already know. So we went instead with IAMPE on a very cost-effective study with a nonprofit to pull together the things that we already knew and provide some more recent data. And then we talked about that in January. Since then, the Assembly's directed evaluation of a regional port authority, which could potentially change how you market Port McKenzie. And I've also been directed to evaluate an economic development zone for the port, which also could change how you market Port McKenzie. So I don't want to get ahead of spending money on something when we haven't set the conditions for what that marketing or that business development might look like. I understand we're 20 plus years in the making on Port McKenzie. So to think we're going to turn it around in a year is probably not reasonable. I think we have answered the question on the Regional Port Authority. We are moving forward with an agreement with the Muni. We are exploring economic development zone opportunities, which could look like local tax incentives, lease breaks, tariff rate breaks. And we've also had conversations with a legislator. And since he put it on the public record just yesterday, I feel like I could share that today. But two of our Valley delegation representatives are looking at state legislation to bring forward. It wouldn't come until the next session around a potential state corporate tax holiday or exclusion period for Port McKenzie to incentivize private investment. So that's going to take time to develop as well. But it's going to be tough to go out and market until those conditions are set. So what we wanted to do is see, well, what can we reasonably put together? We have some other conversations ongoing. We're all with some other folks in the private sector about potential opportunities. We also are still looking at port and harbor grant opportunities at the federal level that might improve our material handling capabilities at the port, because again, that could also be something that you could market around. So at this point, I don't feel like going out and spending $200,000 is going to leave or bring any tangible outcome in the short term. So I went down a road I was not intending to get down tonight, but I hope that helps a little bit. I don't know how to just answer the $200,000 question without a more comprehensive update. So I've talked through most of probably what I'll talk about on May 3rd, because I don't know how much more we're going to know in 2 weeks. But we are working on those things. And I think until those conditions are set, I mean, some of this is following the Assembly's taskings. So, I've got to chase those things out before we can go out and market, because if we go out and market and we're constantly changing the conditions, that's going to be challenging. I think the 2 taskings the Assembly's given are very reasonable things to do. And I think the economic development zone, that whole idea of developing that out is going to take some time, because it's going to require legislation at the state level. If you really want to sweeten it up, we've talked to the governor specifically about that. The mayor and I have, and he is supportive of what we've talked about. But we've got to get some legislation on the table and walk it through the process, which is going to take, unfortunately, because of where we are with this session, it's going to take some time to see how that goes and how quickly that may develop.
Hours, did you have a question?
Thank you. I think you're off the hook for May 3rd, or you can just replay that.
I think so.
I want to say, appreciate that update and marketing strategy. I would like to see us use our dollars effectively. And because of all those things that have been swirling around, I'd rather we do it in an effective way than drop 200,000 on some marketing that may just be ineffective, because we've done that. So I appreciate the effort to think through what we're doing with the marketing, make those dollars count, and get something developed out there.
And one other comment real quick, if I may, just in general, when we talk about $200,000, we talked about it in the context of business development, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean a marketing firm that, in a sense, like if, say, for example, we found a port and harbor grant for $2 million, this could be your 10% match. So this could be used in different ways to develop business opportunities. It doesn't necessarily mean going out and actually just creating marketing materials and have somebody try to drum up business. So that's also why we thought it would be wise to kind of preserve that as some of these things are developing.
Okay, Assemblyperson Hale, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to call the question.
Okay, is there objection to calling the question? Hearing no objection, then, ma'am, we're ready to vote on the.
Any objection?
But I just asked that and nobody objected.
Is there any objection? Don't have to vote.
Okay.
Unless there's
Is there objection on the main motion as amended? Oh, already. So that legislation passes. Ma'am,
Ordinance 22039, an ordinance approving the consolidation of multiple animal care and regulation capital improvement projects and the reappropriation of funds for those projects in a single capital improvement project, and extending the project deadline to June 30th, 2025, with accompanying resolution 22034, a resolution setting the scope of work and amended budgets for outdoor animal care facility improvements to ensure best care practices for shelter animals. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
staff report, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mr. Manager, Assembly members, staff, and members of our community. Chris Loskar, Animal Care Director. Adoption of this ordinance would allow animal care to consolidate the majority of our existing capital improvement project funds into one facility improvement project. That project will allow us to make the best use of the property in the rear of our facility by filling it in and establishing a livestock containment area and an area to house a large number of mushing dogs, especially in emergency situations or during large seizures by our enforcement. I'd be glad to take any questions that you have.
Okay, I think, doesn't look like any questions. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing on ordinance 22-039 and resolution 22-034. Again, we don't have a sign-up sheet, okay? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify? Chris, if you want to go ahead and sit down in case somebody does want to testify. Thank you, sir. Want to testify in ordinance 22-039 or resolution 22-034? Do we have anyone online, Caleb? No, we do not. Okay. Assemblyperson Hours, would you like to move the legislation?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-039 and resolution 22-034, and I'd be happy to speak to it.
Yes, go ahead.
I think this is a good thing to consolidate the funding. I was out there the other day looking at this work, and they had just got in about 18 huskies that they're going to have for a while. So it kind of spoke to when you get a bunch of animals at once, and especially in that back area. There's some kennels back there that have no shelter at all. If you have an event and you have animals that have to come in the winter, that's some harsh conditions for the workers to be under. So it seems like it's a good way to get all this money in one place and make it do some good, and have us be prepared for taking care of the animals that we need to.
Okay, further discussion from the assembly on ordinance 22-039 and resolution 22-034. Online, any assembly person wishing to make comment? Is there any objection to this legislation? Yes, Deputy Mayor. Okay, so I guess then we're ready to vote.
If I can get the members in the room to go ahead and vote on this legislation. Assembly Member 2. Assembly Member 2.
Yes.
You're voting yes on the legislation, just to clarify.
Yes.
Thank you. Assembly Member Bernier.
Yes.
Assembly Member Yent.
Yes.
It passed with Assembly Member Sumner opposed.
Okay.
Now we're on ordinance 22040, an ordinance approving a reappropriation of $50,000 from the fiscal year 2022 Recreation Services Division operating budget to the Borough Saw Crew project to reduce wildfire hazard at borough facilities with accompanying resolution 22035, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for the Borough Saw Creek project. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, staff report, sir, please.
Good evening, Eric Phillips, Community Development Director. Through the mayor, ordinance 22040 is basically correcting a glitch in the budget matrix that we experienced. $50,000 for the saw crew was put into the Parks and Recreation budget. And seeing how that program is run out of land management as a project fund, this ordinance merely takes the $50,000 that's in Parks and Recreation for the saw crew and puts it in land management for the saw crew. It's just moving it from one side of my department to the other so we can utilize it.
Okay. Questions from the assembly to the staff? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-040. Apparently, we don't have sign-in sheet. Anyone in the audience that would like to testify on behalf of or in opposition to this ordinance? Seeing no one. Caleb, do we have anybody online? Nope. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-040 and resolution 22-035.
Okay. Is there discussion? Is there any objection to the ordinance and the resolution being passed? Okay, hearing no objection, the legislation passes.
Ordinance 22042, an ordinance adopting the Port McKenzie Terminal Tariff Number 3. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press star 3.
Okay, I see staff coming.
Madam Mayor, Assembly, I'm Teresa Dolan, Port Operations Manager. The legislation in front of you would be to approve the port tariff. The tariff is the governing document for all rates and fees at the port. It should be reviewed every year or two or three. And so I've brought it forward. We've made changes in the format of the tariff to make it a little bit more user-friendly. The fees are competitive with the Port of Anchorage, but we are just below them in most areas. Well, in all areas, we're below them. There's a couple areas that we're significantly below them, and that's for the commodities that we typically draw into the port, which would be cement and heavy equipment, vehicles, things like that.
Questions of staff on ordinance 22-042? Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-042. No sign-in sheet. Anyone in the audience that would like to testify either for or against or comments on ordinance 22-042? Caleb, anybody online? Okay. One last call for anyone in the audience. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-042.
Okay, is there discussion? Is there any objection?
So,
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, so I guess I do wonder by that statement that we're significantly below Anchorage on particularly the things that we receive the most of. Is it that we set them below on those things, or is it that we do business in those things because we're substantially below Anchorage on them?
I believe that we have that business because we are lower than Anchorage. The reason that it is a cost effective for Alaska to bring in their own cement is because of our tariff versus the Port of Alaska.
So that being said, and given the lack of substantial business down at the port, shouldn't we lower all our tariffs to be substantially below Anchorage's?
So virtually everything in the tariff is negotiable. And when I get any phone calls with potential customers, we talk about what it is they want to bring in, and we talk about the tariff. And if we can make a deal with them, we do. But generally speaking, you'll pick the port that is closest to the destination that you're trying to take your cargo to. So it depends on what it is and what transportation avenues you have to get it to its final destination, which is where our rail comes in. Or lack thereof.
Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
I was looking on the table of contents of page 6 out of 24, saying that the port operates 24/7, 365 days a year. And then that was separate from administration of the port. And I've been looking at and thinking about and talking about the port for like a year. What is it how does it operate 24/7? I mean, what does it do?
It means we're open for business.
I know, but is any business coming? I know we got a ship in May, and we had one a few years ago, but when we say we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
During the spring and summer, we have barge traffic for a lot of project cargo heading into the interior.
I was also looking at the, I think it was the borough manager's letter about, maybe it was talking about the port. It said, it was talking about income and outgoing. It said something about year-to-date operating costs, $340,896, and year-to-date revenues of $111,513. And when you subtract it out, we lose $229,383. So it just, everybody knows how I feel about this. I just keep looking at this thinking, oh my God, when do we call it off? And I know we got stuff in the works, but I just want to register my thoughts on that. Because when I see 24/7, 365, that's like, man, that's a going concern, but we're not. Just saying.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Hello,
Yes, go ahead.
Smokey here.
Uh-huh.
How many different heavy equipment people ship their heavy equipment through the port?
Through the mayor to Assembly Member 2, we typically have, we have two primary customers for heavy equipment, and I don't know if you want me to name them, or they're construction
Well, you
companies.
said-
But we have occasional other construction companies as well.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Through the mayor to Mr. Two, also that some of this work that comes in and out, like I'll use the Tyonic example from last year, it's project based. So some of it depends on who wins a contract and what the project is. And as you know, projects come and go, and it depends on the funding and what the need is at the time. So I think what you see is that the movement of heavy equipment and project cargo it depends on the projects and where those areas specifically are. As Ms. Dolan mentioned, a lot of this has to do with, being closer to your destination or access to your home base. I don't think it's a secret Western and cruise construction routinely use Port McKenzie, but like with Western's example, I think it was more related to project cargo, whereas cruise perhaps is a little bit more seasonal, but it's probably more regular, if that's helpful.
Okay, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just like to point out that we're discussing whether or not to adopt this particular tariff agreement that they've been working on. We're not debating the general merits of Port McKenzie at this time.
Okay, thank you for helping us keep on track. Further discussion on the ordinance? Okay, is there any objection to passing the ordinance? Madam Clerk, the legislation passes. Go ahead.
Ordinance 22043, an ordinance approving a supplemental appropriation of $50,000 from Caswell Lakes Road Service Area Fund Balance Fund 272 to Caswell Road Service Area Fiscal Year 2022 Operating Budget Fund 272.
We have a staff report, sir.
Barry Dolan, Director of Public Works. This action moves funds from fund balance in the service area to the operating budget. It's going to allow us to pay our bills through the rest of the year. All of our road service areas were hit with large adjustments in the cost of living adjustments in their contracts last fall. And this service area and one other you'll see in a minute here have very little flexibility in their operating budget. And so this provides them the flexibility they need to continue operating.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing on ordinance 22-043. Do not have a sign-in sheet. One in the audience that would like to testify on ordinance 22-043 online, Caleb? No? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance serial number 22-043.
Discussion. Seeing no discussion, is there any objection?
Smokey,
Oh, yes, sir, go ahead.
you said the reason we need this is because we were hit with a high fuel charge. Is that what I understood Terry to say?
Go ahead, sir.
Through the mayor to Assemblyman Two, so the fuel costs are only part of the annual cost of living adjustment, but yes, to a large degree, it was fuel.
Okay, any other discussion on ordinance 22-043? Is there any objection? Passing the legislation. Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22044, an ordinance approving a supplemental appropriation of $50,000 from Trapper Creek Road Service Area Fund Balance Fund 284 to the Trapper Creek Road Service Area fiscal year 2002 operating budget.
Okay, staff report, sir.
Terry Dolan, Director of Public Works. So this is the same situation except in Trapper Creek, large increase in costs associated with cost of living that hit us this fall, and very limited flexibility in the operating budget of this service area. So we're requesting the movement of funds from fund balance to keep the service area operating.
Okay, questions? Okay, oh, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, through the mayor. So I had a question. So we're appropriating from fund balance to the operating budget. So is the money already spent and we're backfilling in the operating budget, or what is the situation there? Is it going to be spent between now and the end of the fiscal year and hasn't been, or what is that situation?
Through the mayor to Assemblyman Sumner. So we have not spent the funds, but I believe that a large portion of them anyway will be spent by the end of the fiscal year. Any amount that is not spent will roll back into the fund balance at the end of the year.
Okay. Any other? I'm going to open public hearing on ordinance 22-044. Do not have anyone in the audience that would like to testify regarding this legislation. Do we have anybody online regarding? No. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Discussion, or I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, you need to move the legislation.
I move to adopt ordinance 22-044.
Okay, discussion by the Assembly. Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to this legislation passing? Okay, hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22045, an ordinance amending MSB 2.12030 to clarify the durational residency requirement for assembly districts. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay, are you the staff person? Are you the staff person?
The clerk is
Oh.
nodding yes, so it's me.
Okay,
Mrs. Mayor, members of the Assembly,
Yeah, I think
MSB 212030 currently provides that a person must live within their assembly district for 1 year to be eligible to run for office. This was amended in 2016. Before that date, it was 30 days. So this is the first time that district lines or assembly lines are being moved since that time. And it became a question, what happens if the line moves, but a person didn't move their house? There is a residency requirement in the Alaska Constitution as well for state legislators. However, there's no cases in Alaska interpreting that language. So we went out and looked at what other states have and seeks to clarify. This ordinance here seeks to clarify the answer to that question. And it sets a rule that so long as a person has resided in the area to be represented for 1 year, if the line moves and they're now in a new area, they would then be eligible. And so other states have confronted this question. This particular language is from language that the state of Georgia has used, just by adding the words, the area, the territory embraced within the district, to make it clear that if the line moves, but the person hasn't moved and they've lived there for over a year, that they would be eligible to run for what would be an amended or changed assembly district. There's some other questions that Assemblymember Sumner has brought up regarding this issue that we're going to dig into a little further, but none of them would be addressed based upon the maps that you adopted earlier.
okay. Assemblyperson Hale, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So just for clarification, the folks who are on the school board who have had the lines move from around their homes would be able to run for the school board in the district that they are now in.
Yes, but for a different reason. State law sets the durational residency requirement for school board members as 30 days, and we can't change it. So for school board members, it's already 30 days. It's because we can set the local level at a year, and we have, that it just became an issue here that we were looking at.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-045. We do not have a sign-up sheet. Anyone in the audience who would like to testify on this ordinance? Anybody online, Caleb? No? Okay. One last time, anyone else want to testify, or anybody period want to testify? Okay, go ahead and close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-045.
Okay. Discussion by the assembly. Okay. Is there any objection to passing this legislation, ordinance 22-045? Any objection? I don't hear any. Legislation is passed. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22046, an ordinance reappropriating $25,000 from the fiscal year 2022 Finance Department Operating Budget Fund 100 to Fund 450, Project 70012, to Port McKenzie dock improvements and repairs with accompanying resolution 22037, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for Port McKenzie dock improvements.
Okay, staff report.
Through the assembly to, or through the mayor to the assembly, Cheyenne Heindel, finance director. There was money set aside in the fiscal year 23 budget for erosion control on the port as part of the MPI settlement. 25,000 of it has already been used. This 25,000 we are moving to a project so that it can be, the work can be done and completed in the future, but it probably will not be done by June 30, and we do not wish it to lapse. So hence the legislation before you.
Any questions on the staff report? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone, we again don't have a sign-in sheet. So you can testify on ordinance 22-046 and resolution 22-037. Anyone want to testify on either one of these items? Caleb, do we have anybody online wanting to? No, we do not. One last time for anybody here. Don't see anybody. Public hearing is now closed. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-046 and resolution 22-037.
Okay, discussion by assembly.
So is this just
Yeah.
the 25,000 that we're talking about? That's it? I don't know how you can even put in a nail for 25,000 bucks, but okay, if it's already appropriated.
Any further discussion? Any objection to this legislation passing? Seeing and hearing none, legislation passes. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22048, an ordinance accepting and appropriating a $50,000 donation from the Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation for Lazy Mountain Trailhead parking lot improvements with accompanying resolution 22038, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for the Lazy Mountain parking lot improvement project.
Staff?
Through the mayor to the assembly, finance director Cheyenne Heindel. This legislation before you has taken a little bit to get here. This money originated as part of the community action money that we give to community councils. Lazy Mountain decided that they wanted it to go to this program, so they donated it to the Park and Recs Trails organization, who has turned around and granted it to us so they can get this parking lot done.
Okay, questions, comments? No? And we don't have a sign-in sheet. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing then on ordinance 22-048 and resolution 22-038. Is there anyone that would like to testify in either one of those? Anybody online, Caleb? No, thank you. Any one last call? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and Assemblyperson Hale, what's your
Thank you,
wishes?
Madam Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance 22-048 and resolution 22-038, and I would like to speak to it briefly.
Sure.
This is, well, I just turned off my mic. This is the community council's money. They could not spend it because they are not a nonprofit. So they passed it through the nonprofit Matsu Trails and Parks Foundation. This is the trailhead parking lot improvements are going to include a gate that will an automatic closing gate, opening and closing gate that will keep the more undesirable folks out of there at night. So they're not down there burning pallets in the parking lot and breaking beer bottles and stuff. It's also going to include a little bit of improvements to the parking area. So there will be a couple parking spots outside of the gate for folks who like to hike the mountain super early in the morning. They can park outside the gate, get in, walk in and access the trailhead. But this is a priority for the Lazy Mountain Community Council, and I would hope that we have unanimous consent on this.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is there any objection? Okay, legislation passes then, lady. Okay, so I think that wraps up our 12 public hearings, huh? All right, I think probably everybody would be in favor of a 10-minute break. Any objection to that? All righty, we will go ahead and break for 10 minutes. Thank you. Notes now, right? Assembly meeting back to order, and the next item we have is audience participation. Oh, and we have a sign-in sheet. Wait, Clay, or see around still? Oh, there he is. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chapman, can I get you to turn the mic on, sir? Thank you.
My name is Clay Chapman, Chapman. So for y'all out in radio land or video land, I just hand them a flyer and also a bottle of water that contains lead. That's poison, so don't drink it, okay? You see what it did to the fish, okay? At the same time, I sent you some literature here. So let's get really facts on what's happening on this ASCTP proposal of a nonprofit organization. Here in the warning, it says right here, and all ammunition and all lead components have this. I'll read it to you. Known to cause birth defects, respiratory harm, and other serious physical injuries. Mr. Moss will not stand up here and say, hey, that doesn't pollute anything. That doesn't harm anything. If he does, come up here and say, he just shot himself in the foot. We are getting ready to sell this ASCTP of 200 virgin land for $1. If I may do a recap real quick for you. First of all, I am a big game hunter. Not only that, I'm a slave to my Lord Jesus Christ. Not only that, I am a watchman. Look what a watchman means. Let's do a recap on this shooting range of ASCTP. Big Lake shot him down 9 years ago. Joe Reddington shot him down 7 years ago. I just found out through another government official, will make seven, Miller Reach landing strip. Wow. 1 Point McKenzie site, another Point McKenzie site, Kinnick Tribe, through the CEO of Tom, and now we're back to Joe Reddington. Isn't that really interesting? Anybody that knows biblical scripture, that's 7. Not only that, we're in the 7th anniversary year of doing this all over again. It's not the kids' fault that they don't have a home. It's Mr. Moss that will not allow them to have a home because he could have had it at Point McKenzie, away from any residential, from any school, but it was pride that stepped in. No, also, it's too far to drive. Gas. Well, here we are going to be in an economy downfall, and I am showing you an uptake or money. All I've been hearing since I've been doing this, we need money, we need money. Millions of dollars, a $50 million revenue of real estate. Wow, that's something else we're going to sell for $1. $1. My community pays $50,000 to $75,000 an acre. Since this, I've just gone out. I work a full-time job. I have 2 businesses. Really? 3 minutes? Oh, okay, I'm up. It went by so fast.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else like to address the assembly on any subject? Yeah, sure, come on up.
Mr. Moss, if I can get you to turn the mic on when you get up there.
Well, my name's Neil Moss. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I am the president of Alaska SCTP that Mr. Chapman was just mentioning. You know, he's very dramatic with his bottle of water. The bottom line is lead does not dilute in water. Regardless of what anybody tries to tell you, if you look at that water 10 years from now, it's going to look exactly the same as it does now. As far as having a piece of property further out Point McKenzie, you know, this is a high school program, just no different than football or baseball or wrestling or any other school sport you want to name. The kids have to have a place close to the residential areas, not in a residential area, but close, that they can get to after school, shoot, and be home by dinner time. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's why this piece of land was chosen. It meets all of the requirements for the kids. It's not in the middle of a subdivision. Mr. Chapman does live, I don't know, a mile or a half a mile. I don't know exactly how many feet from the property, but he is probably one of the closer neighbors. You may have received a petition here. I got people on Hemlock Road, which borders that property, signed a petition for sale to go through. So it's not everybody in the neighborhood. It's one guy who likes to hunt in that area. And it's his personal hunting ground. The guy who lives on the other side of the property has his own trail going in there. We've walked that trail. Joe Metzger and I, my wife, we walked that trail last summer. He put it in there with his off-road vehicle. It doesn't take much to put a trail in Alaska. If you drive a four-wheeler, you can make a footpath walking on tundra in Alaska. You can do it in just a couple of trips. So I just reiterate, please keep an open mind. Please keep the children in mind. I'll have my say on the 3rd. Hopefully this will get heard on the 3rd. That's why I'm here tonight, to see if it's going to go through. That's about all I got to say for right now. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to? I was just asking if there was anybody else. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Borough Manager, members of the Assembly. My name is Paxton Crum, CRUM. I was an athlete for Alaska SCTP for 7 years. I started in the program 7 years ago, and I stood in this room 7 years ago when the land was shot down over in Big Lake, I believe it was. And I'm here again. I'm here fighting, and I want this land to go through. Why? Because this is a fantastic program. I mean, I can't even express how amazing this program is. We have teams all over the entire state of Alaska. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to save that for the 3rd because I will be here. I will give a more concise presentation on that. What I do want to mention is the fact that I have been doing this since I was 11. And since then, I have been telling anybody I can, anybody who will listen about this program. I have been the reality is that I have spoke to many people about this program, and I have never, not one person tell me that they oppose what we stand for and what we do. Everybody's like, wow, that is amazing. I didn't know that existed. I wish that was around when we were kids. Because the reality is that Alaska SCTP is a fantastic program, statewide. And I want to I ask you to think about this in the next 14 days before the May 3rd, as I read to you verbatim the Alaska SCTP mission statement. Alaska SCTP is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting youth shooting on a competitive and scholastic level throughout the state of Alaska. Our purpose is to provide funds, equipment, training, and guidance to the youth shooting programs of Alaska with the goal of developing self-confidence, self-esteem, self-reliance, respect, personal discipline, responsibility, citizenship, teamwork, and sportsmanship through regular competition at local, state, and national events. I've competed at local, state, and national events. It is an amazing program, and I hope that you keep an open mind about this, as Neil said. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the assembly on any matter? Okay. Caleb, do we have anybody online? No, we do not. So one last chance. Anyone like to address the assembly on any matter? Okay, so I'll close audience participation. And Madam Clerk, lead us through the consent agenda, please.
Resolution 22040, a resolution amending the budgets for project numbers 20316, Human Resources Information System, project number 47531, Logos Process Improvement, project number 20316, Govern Application, project number 20316, Govern System Upgrade, and approving the scope of work and budget for the financial system enhancements, project number 47506, AM 22024, approval of contract extension and additional change order authority for contract number 21150B with Roger Hickle Contracting Incorporated for the construction of Houston Middle School project, AM 22028, authorization of amendment number 1 to contract number 21171B with U.S. Ecology Alaska LLC to increase from $100,000 to $150,000 per fiscal year for the duration of the contract for household hazardous waste transportation. AM 22032, award of proposal number 22090P-B to Lounsbury and Associates Incorporated in the contract amount of $471,645 to develop Hemmer Road design documents. And AM 22034, vacate majority of the 33-foot wide section line easement lying along the south boundary of lots 18 and 19, Rocky Point Phase 2, plat number 2002-82, and Tract A, Rocky Point Phase 1, plat number 2019-92, except for the 33 by 33-foot triangle section line easement to remain on the west side of Lot 18, Rocky Point Phase 2, located in Section 10, Township 17 North, Range 2 East, Seward Meridian.
Okay. The mayor?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
Discussion. Is there any objection? Okay, hearing no objection, then the consent agenda is approved. We do have some items that were pulled, correct?
The first one is Resolution 22043, a resolution establishing the minimum level of funding for the Matanuska-Susitna Borough School District from local sources for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, pulled by Assemblymember McKee. Move it first.
Oh, okay. Assemblyperson McKee, would you move Resolution 22-043? So that doesn't mean that you approve of it.
It means I just get it on the
move
table.
So we
Okay.
can get going.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I move 22043.
Okay. We
Yeah.
have a staff report.
I don't know.
And do you want a staff report?
Actually,
just
I'm not
ready to
sure.
answer a
I have a
question?
pretty simple question, but go ahead.
Okay.
Cheyenne, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead then, ma'am.
Me?
Mhm.
Really, the only question I had when I was reading, it said, passage of the resolution, blah, 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 fulfills the requirements of Alaska statute, blah, blah, blah. And it talks about, this last paragraph here says, the Borough Assembly provided $65,841,806 in local support for education in fiscal year 2022. In addition, $15,846,560 was provided for the net debt service for the school construction and improvement bonds. And the last sentence is the one that kind of bothered me. This funding equated to 7.864 mils for the local supportive education. And I thought we did 6.3. I may be totally misunderstanding what I'm reading, but I see 6.3. Okay. Then I see 7.864.
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee. The reason it's 7.864 is because the 65,841,806 was 6.3 mils. Then you add on to it the amount of school debt that the borough had to pay that was not reimbursed by the state. That gets you up to the 7.864 mils.
Do you think the public knows that?
Well, I hope so. We try to point it out in the tax brochures. If you look at your tax brochure that comes with your tax bill, it does have a breakdown of the mill rate. On your tax bill, it does the same thing, shows 6.3, how much is related to school bond debt, how much is related to other bond debt, and borough operations and capital. So we try to get it out there, but it's always in this resolution annually.
Okay, and I understand that what you just said is so. It just was kind of shocking to me to see that difference in the mill rate, so thank you.
Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that going to the community council meetings, I made it absolutely clear to all my community councils over the last several years that the state not reimbursing us was costing us 1.6 mils in property value that we were having to pay that from the state not reimbursing us.
My assemblyman didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I made it very clear to my folks.
Further discussion on the motion. Is there any objection to passing and approving RS 22-043? Okay, I don't see any objection, so that has been approved. Next item, Madam Clerk.
AM 22030, awarded bid number 22075B to Anchorage Roofing and Contracting Incorporated, and the contract amount is $657,665 to replace the Wasilla pool roof, and it was pulled by Assemblymember McKee.
Okay, go ahead and move it, please, and then you can discuss and ask questions.
Okay, and do I say I move to adopt? 22030?
22-030.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 22030.
Okay, alrighty, then you have questions, ma'am?
I do. I remember an awful lot of conversation a few years back about appropriating zillions of dollars for repairing all the pools and the roofs and all that sort of thing. And I kind of thought that was a done deal. So when I saw this come up again, I thought, what did we do? Did we just like run short of money and didn't quite get to Wasilla pool to do this? My other question is, to replace a roof is basically $700,000. I don't know much about construction, but that seems like a lot of bucks for replacing a roof. And what happened to the original? What happened to the original amount that was appropriated for this school pools?
I'll leave the price of the roof to Terry, but in terms of we passed a bond to repair both pools.
Mhm.
However, the roofing component of the Wasilla pool was not done as part of the renovation project. There ended up being some funding left over in the bond, and because the roof is in such poor shape, we decided to apply the remaining funds from the bond to go ahead and get that roof replaced because it is in pretty poor shape.
How big is the roof?
How big is the roof? You know, I can't answer that off the top of my head.
That's a big roof for that much money. Maybe Mr. Dolan could talk about that.
I can say that the 600 and some $1,000 based on the cost to repair other buildings that we have under our care. I mean, it's a lot of money, but in comparison to the other facilities, it's not.
Okay. Further questions or discussion from the rest of the assembly on AM 22-030? Assemblyperson McKee, do you have follow-up?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So I did go out there. I mean, the roof is leaking. It's a flat roof, so I assume they're going to replace it with the membrane, replace all the foam. And I mean, these projects are expensive, so that's probably in line with what it ought to cost.
Further discussion?